My mother's face was twisted in pure rage when she threw open the front door and screamed, "Get out of my house!" and never come back. Behind her, my stepbrother and aunt stood in a unified wall, nodding coldly as my packed suitcases were hurled into the wet gravel. They thought they were destroying me. They thought that by casting me out into the rain, with nothing but a trash bag of clothes, I would beg for their mercy. But I didn't shed a single tear. I just looked them in the eye, turned around, and walked away. They had no idea that the very next morning, I would sign the deed to an $87 million private island estate, paid in full. Stay tuned until the very end to see the exact moment their smiles shattered when they realized who held all the power, and drop your city in the comments below. My name is Amber. I am 27 years old, and that freezing November night was the exact moment my old life ended. I stood on the porch, my skin stinging from the biting wind, while my mother stood under the warm glow of the entryway light. Her face was completely unrecognizable, twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated venom. "You are an ungrateful leech, Amber," she hissed, her voice echoing across the quiet neighborhood. "Everything in this house belongs to this family, and you are no longer a part of it. Get out." Behind her stood my stepbrother, Dominic, a man who hadn't worked an honest day in his life, wearing a smug, victorious grin. My aunts clustered around him, nodding in cold, silent agreement. They didn't see me as a daughter or a niece. They saw me as an inconvenience that had finally been dealt with. Dominic stepped forward, hoisted my two oldest suitcases, and casually tossed them over the railing. They slammed into the wet, muddy gravel below, bursting open and spilling my clothes into the dirt. They all stared at me, waiting for the tears. They expected me to fall to my knees, sob, and beg my mother to let me back inside. But as I looked at the family who had spent the last 5 years treating me like an unwanted outsider, something inside me snapped. The sadness completely evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I didn't shed a single tear. I didn't say a word. I simply turned around, walked down the steps, and threw my ruined bags into the trunk of my car. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced down at my phone. I opened a hidden, encrypted banking application, and the glowing screen illuminated the darkness of the driver's seat. It was time to unleash a reality they were never prepared for. The truth was, my family thought they were tossing a broke, desperate woman into the street. For the past 2 years, they truly believed I was working a dead-end, low-paying data entry job, barely scraping by. Whenever Dominic demanded expensive gadgets or my mother needed her credit card bills paid, I would quietly hand over a small portion of my savings, pretending it was all I had. They treated me like a financial doormat, completely unaware of the empire I was building on my laptop late at night. I am actually the anonymous founder of a global digital asset platform. I built it from scratch in my early 20s, and 6 months ago, a massive tech conglomerate quietly acquired it. I had more wealth sitting in a single private trust account than my entire extended family would see in 10 lifetimes. But I chose to keep it a complete secret. I wanted to see if they would ever love me for who I was, rather than what I could buy for them. Tonight, I got my answer. They didn't care if I froze or starved, as long as Dominic got my bedroom. Let me ask you a question right now. Would you have hidden your massive wealth from a toxic, greedy family to test their true loyalty? Or would you have flaunted it right in their faces from day one? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As the rain hammered against my windshield, I realized the test was officially over, and my family had failed miserably. I gripped the steering wheel, pulled over to the side of the road, and dialed an elite, off-market luxury real estate broker I had on speed dial. It was midnight, but when you have my balance, people answer. The next morning, the storm had cleared, leaving the sky a brilliant, crisp blue. I pulled my car into the pristine gated parking lot of an elite luxury brokerage firm downtown. Walking through the polished glass doors, I knew I looked completely out of place. I was still wearing the same damp hoodie and muddy sneakers from the night my family threw me out, my hair pulled back into a messy bun. The receptionist glanced up, her eyes sweeping over my disheveled appearance with an immediate cold judgment. She didn't see a client, she saw a vagrant who had wandered into the wrong building. But I didn't care about her look. I walked straight past her desk and into the private office of the principal broker, a man named Sterling who specialized in transactions that never made the public news. I sat down across from him and told him exactly what I wanted. I didn't want a mansion in the suburbs, and I didn't want a penthouse downtown. I wanted total isolation, absolute security, and a fortress of my own. I wanted the $87 million private island estate off the coast that his agency had been quietly shopping to billionaires. Sterling chuckled softly, a patronizing smile spreading across his face as he began to gently explain that the property required an astronomical financial verification just to view. Without saying a word, I opened my laptop, turned the screen toward him, and authorized a direct, secure wire transfer for the entire $87 million, paid in full. I watched the color completely drain from his face as his internal system flashed bright green, confirming the funds had cleared. His patronizing smile shattered into pure, breathless shock. He handed me the deed and keys. I walked away, without saying a single goodbye to my past. 3 weeks passed in absolute blissful silence. While I was settling into my new coastal fortress, discovering the breathtaking views from the castle estate's wraparound terraces, back in the city, reality was hitting my mother and Dominic like a physical blow. They had expected me to crawl back within 48 hours, begging for forgiveness and offering to pay the utilities. Instead, my phone remained completely dark, and their bills were piling up. But their desperation quickly morphed into monstrous greed because of a single careless mistake by a courier service. A high-end corporate mail package, containing an official bank statement and the physical deed to the island estate, was mistakenly delivered to my mother's house. Dominic, being the naturally nosy person he is, sliced the envelope open. He expected to find credit card debts or an eviction notice. Instead, his eyes landed on a document displaying my legal name alongside a balance of $87 million and the coordinates of a private island castle. The discovery sent shockwaves through the entire household. My mother didn't feel guilt for throwing her daughter out. She felt an overwhelming sense of entitlement to my fortune. Instead of calling to apologize, they immediately consulted a shady lawyer to see if they could claim I was mentally unstable when I acquired the funds, plotting a fraudulent scheme to trap me and force their way into my new life. That evening, my phone finally buzzed. It was a text from my mother, her tone completely changed into a desperate, sickeningly sweet plea. "Amber, darling, we made a horrible mistake that night. We miss you so much. We are coming to see you tomorrow to make things right." They thought they were setting a trap, completely unaware they were walking directly into mine. The morning they arrived at the coast, the ocean air was thick with mist, but nothing could obscure the staggering grandeur of my new home. My mother, Dominic, and 2 of my aunts piled out of a rented vehicle at the edge of the private marina, staring across the water in absolute open-mouthed disbelief. Looming in the distance was my $87 million island estate, its stone towers rising majestically against the horizon. They walked down the dock toward the private shuttle launch, expecting to just breeze past the security gates, but they were immediately blocked by 3 imposing uniformed guards. "We are here to see Amber," Dominic barked, trying to regain his usual arrogant composure. "We're her family." Before the guards could answer, I stepped off the returning private water taxi and onto the dock. I looked completely transformed, wearing a sophisticated, tailored outfit, my blonde hair catching the morning light, a confident and radiant smile on my face. I looked like a woman who owned the world, because I did. My mother's eyes widened, and she instantly forced a sob, stepping forward with synthetic tears streaming down her cheeks. "Oh, Amber, sweetie, look at you," she cried, her hands reaching out in a desperate display of affection. It was all a horrible misunderstanding that night. The stress got to me, but we are a family. We belong together, in a beautiful place like this. Let us in so we can celebrate your success. Behind her, Dominic subtly adjusted his jacket, his hand nervously brushing against a leather folder containing the fraudulent legal papers they had brought for me to sign. They genuinely believed I was still the naive girl they could manipulate with a fake apology. I didn't step forward to hug her. Instead, I let out a sharp, cold laugh that cut right through her synthetic tears. I raised my hand and gestured toward the security pavilion. Two men in sharp business suits stepped out, carrying thick legal briefcases. "Mom, Dominic, did you really think I didn't know you opened my mail?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. "I knew the exact moment you intercepted that bank statement, and I knew about the fraudulent legal claims you drafted with your shady lawyer this week. You didn't come here because you love me. You came here because you are greedy." Dominic's arrogant smirk instantly vanished, and my mother froze, her eyes darting between me and the approaching attorneys. While they had been busy plotting a disgusting scheme to leech off my hard-earned fortune, I had spent the last 2 weeks using my vast financial resources to thoroughly audit their lives. I didn't just build a tech empire, I bought up the massive, outstanding debts they had been hiding from each other. My lead attorney stepped forward and handed my mother a brightly colored manila folder. "What is this?" she whispered, her hands shaking. "That is a legal notice of foreclosure," I replied smoothly. "Your primary house was heavily leveraged, Mom. I quietly bought out the entire debt on that property from your bank 3 days ago. I am now your official lien holder. You threw me out into the freezing rain with 30 minutes to pack my life into trash bags. So, I am returning the exact same favor. You are not getting a single foot onto this private island. In fact, you have exactly 30 days to vacate your own home before my legal team evicts you." The look of absolute, crushing defeat on their faces as they realized they had completely destroyed their own lives by crossing me was worth every single dollar I spent. They slunk back to their rented car, entirely empty-handed and drowning in the severe consequences of their own monstrous greed. I turned away, walking back up the scenic stone pathway toward my magnificent island castle, finally bathed in absolute peace and entirely free from the suffocating toxicity of my past. If your own family did something this terrible to you, would you ever find it in your heart to forgive them? Let me know in the comments. Meanwhile, I am leaving on the final screen 2 other explosive stories that are channel favorites, and their unbelievable twists will absolutely shock you. Thank you so much for watching.